Good evening. I'd like to call to order the October 8th meeting of the Titusville Planning and Zoning Commission, and we'll stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Lori.
Chairman Aton,
Here.
Vice Chairman Childs.
Here.
Secretary Grant.
Here.
Member Faison.
Here.
Member Garrod.
Here.
Member Scully.
Here.
Member Gillen.
Here.
Alternate Member Seidler.
Here.
Alternate Member Troutman.
We have a quorum. Next order of business is approval of the minutes of September 17th. Have a motion? Member
Make a
Chung?
motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
Seconded by Member Faison. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes pass. City Attorney, would you like to read the quasi-judicial confirmation procedures?
Yes, I'll somewhat paraphrase, but a quasi-judicial matter, and we have, I believe, one tonight. A quasi-judicial matter differs from administrative or legislative matters, that it's a matter that's applying the facts of a particular case against existing statute, ordinance, or rule. For a quasi-judicial matter, all testimony needs to be taken under oath, which is accomplished by signing an oath card and delivering it to the clerk. All exhibits that are presented will be retained by the city and become part of the record. At this time, Madam Clerk, were these items properly noticed?
Yes.
And do you have any cards for the quasi-judicial item?
Not at this moment.
Not yet, okay. If anyone wants to speak on the quasi-judicial item, if you could fill out a signature card which contains the oath and deliver it to the clerk at this time, that would be appreciated. Also, for a quasi-judicial item, all members need to disclose any ex parte communications. So any communications you had with anyone about the quasi-judicial item, and that would include any site visit to the property or other investigation that you did, needs to be disclosed to the on the dais before the item is heard. So if there are any questions, we can go forward.
Great, thank you. We did want to make one note of an item under new business, which was small scale amendment number 5-2025, which was the bleach plant on Golden Knights Boulevard. That item will be rescheduled, and we don't have a date certain yet.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just a correction. Golden Knights Boulevard is going forward today.
Okay.
The item, it was on the agenda addendum, and it was under new business, and it was called Sunset Development.
Okay.
And that's the one that's the bleach manufacturing.
that's-
So that's the
okay.
one that's
I'm
been
sorry.
Rescheduled.
All right, thanks for the clarification. So that item will be heard at a different time. Next item is our first section for petitions and requests from the public present. If you've got anything to speak about that's not an agenda item, you can do so now. There'll be another opportunity toward the end of the meeting. Do we have anyone who wants to speak?
Stan.
Stan.
Has it been handed out?
I'm sorry?
Has it been handed out yet?
No.
Okay, have a handout. Good evening, my name is Stan Johnston, and I'm a professional engineer. I'm come to you to speak about a project that I've spoken about many times, I've had signs about, and this is an email, copy of an email that I'm hand delivering to you. It goes to Brad Parrish, Kevin Cook, Fire Chief KBFOSU, and Ashley Smith regarding SNJ Oaks. And this is a survey that I have right here. So I'm going to repeat the first sentence that you have there. It says, I repeat to you, the name of, pardon me, the subject of this email is continuing serious errors with city's approval of the erroneous SNJ Oaks survey, sketch plat, plans plat, and construction without survey monuments. That's a mouthful. So the first sentence says, I repeat to you the following continuing serious errors with city's approval of SNJ Oaks. Number one, with city's approved plans and plat, owner Dashers at 1155 Mockingbird Lane have no access to their house. I'm knocking on your door because this has come about many times over the last 3 years. So I'm saying is that with city's approved plans and plat, owner Dashers at 1155 Mockingbird Lane have no access to their house. If you have questions, let me know. In other words, this is a plan of a subdivision in which there's a road on it called Mockingbird Lane. Some of you know about it. And that the last house was promised that it was going to have access to it with this project. It has had access for years as Mockingbird Lane, and now it has no access. And let me say it again. This house was promised it was going to have access, and now it no longer has access with this project. Let me show you. Here's the survey. Right here is Dasher's house. Here's Mockingbird Lane that goes to Dasher's house. The owner here and the surveyor and the engineer and the city said, well, we're going to have access now to these landlocked properties, these houses, when we develop it. Well, right now, you see right here, it doesn't go to this lot. So in other words, the owner can't provide access to that lot, that house. They have no access because of this project. I think it's something you should question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you should have some questions.
Do we have anyone else that wants to speak at this time? I'm sorry, Mr. Faison.
For staff, have you guys looked into this claim that this person doesn't have access to their home?
Director Brad Parrish has, I'm not sure what the result was, but there have been multiple times addressing Mr. Johnston's concerns with Mockingbird Lane.
All right. We have no old business. New business was SSA 5-2026 or 6-2025. Got my dyslexia kicking in here. Staff?
Good evening, Christy Anderson, Senior Planner. This is a request for annexation, small-scale comprehensive plan map amendment and rezoning, application number 6-2025, known as Golden Knights Boulevard Industrial. The applicant is requesting a voluntary annexation and small-scale comprehensive plan amendment with rezoning on approximately 9.18 acres of land. The subject property is made up of 2 parcels within the unincorporated Brevard County and is currently vacant. The property is located south of Golden Knights Boulevard and east of Tyco Road, just east of the Space Coast Regional Airport. The property has a Brevard County future land use designation of industrial and is zoned light industrial IU. The intent of the request is to change both parcels to the city's industrial future land use designation with industrial M2 zoning to allow for the development of industrial uses with connections to city services. A concept plan was not provided as part of this request. The intensity of the city's industrial future land use designation will provide for a maximum build-out potential of just over 400,000 square feet, and this does not account for additional limitations including parking, stormwater, setbacks, and buffers. City utilities are available to serve the property, and the preliminary concurrency assessment found sufficient capacity for the maximum build-out scenario and will not exceed the standard levels of service. Impacts on the surrounding areas may be mitigated by performance standards described in the M2 zoning district, including increased building setbacks that must be increased for each foot above buildings over 50 feet in height. In addition, the property is also located within an airport height notification zone and is required to obtain either a variance or approval from the Federal Aviation Administration and the Florida Department of Transportation in order to allow structures or buildings over 25 feet in height. This should ensure that buildings and structures maintain an appropriate safe distance from the Space Coast Regional Airport and other adjacent properties. The development must adhere to all other performance standards, including minimum landscape yard buffers, screening, lighting, and noise regulations. Industrial zone lands provide jobs and economic diversity. However, they are generally difficult to zone due to compatibility and nuisance impacts on surrounding areas. The proposed industrial M2 zoning district provides more allowable uses than the existing county's light industrial zoning. The city has the opportunity to add more flexibility to the allowable uses, which will help facilitate the development of vacant and/or underutilized industrial properties. Staff has found that the request is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and Chapter 171 of the Florida statutes. Staff recommends approval of the annexation request and approval of the comprehensive plan future land use small-scale map amendment, changing the industrial Brevard County future land use designation to the city's industrial future land use designation, and approval of the rezoning from Brevard County Light Industrial IU zoning district to the city's industrial M2 zoning district on the approximate 9.1 acre property located south of Golden Knights Boulevard and east of Tyco Road, having Brevard County parcel ID numbers 23-35-02-01-*90 and 23-35-02-01-*77. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have from staff at this time.
Anyone have any questions before we open the public hearing? Oh.
I didn't have a question. I just
McGrath.
wanted to make a comment that staff's analysis I thought was pretty on point, that the proposed annexation reduces an existing enclave, and in the case of city growth, that's always an advantage to decrease the amount of enclave property you have. But in this case, they're reducing it and they're not creating a bigger or more isolated enclave. Sometimes that occurs. So that was one comment I had, and I thought your analysis was really good. Thank you.
And just for the other members who aren't familiar with the terminology, Florida statutes defines an enclave as a pocket of unincorporated county within the city limits. And so we're not allowed to annex property if it's going to result in an enclave. And so in this case, we have an existing enclave and we're reducing the size of that enclave. So this is seen as a benefit.
Vice Chairman Childs?
So the industrial in the county, you said that there's certain uses that they don't allow in the county that our light industrial would allow them. Are there specific uses that they're looking for? I mean, I guess for this, but I guess what's missing from the county, I don't know.
I think it has more to do with connections with city services. So if industrial properties are wanting to be developed and they're needing connections to city service, they are required to submit a voluntary annexation. So I think that that's the driving factor rather than the uses. But it does expand the allowable uses from what the county currently allows.
And then after it's annexed, it'll be added to the tax rolls, also that piece of
Correct.
property, at least. Okay, thanks.
Member Faison?
We talked earlier this year or late last year, maybe have been earlier last year, about our different percentages and whether or not we fall in a certain area. Remember that conversation? Okay, forgot what it was all about. But the M2 grows that, correct? So we now have more industrial or more in that area now.
So that conversation was, if I'm remembering right, was about the Live Local Act. And that's because of the residential versus the non-residential percentage of our land uses. And so if we trip a certain threshold, then Live Local projects would no longer have to provide a mixed-use component to their Live Local project. This is not of a size that would change that threshold for the city.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I'll open the public hearing. We have cards, Lori?
We have the applicant.
Great.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Jean Abion. I'm with Hutton, Thomas and Hutton. We're the civil engineers representing the developer. We concur with your staff's recommendation on annexing our property with the comp plan amendment to industrial and zoning to M2 zoning. I think staff answered the question. We have to tie into your utilities, so we have to annex, but really we don't have to. We like Titusville. We have good experience in Titusville, and we like to work in Titusville. So we respectfully ask you to approve our request, and I'm here mainly for any questions you may have.
Is there any current activity as it relates to what you think the use may be or how quickly it may get used? Or?
We are in discussion right now, nothing 100% yet, but we are in discussion with with a potential tenant that may come on this property. We did have a meeting, pre-app with staff. It's a construction equipment company that may want to be in this location, but we don't have anything final yet. We're trying to finalize things.
Is this in the area, I know we had some discussions about berms and beautification along Golden Knights. Is this in the area we were discussing, Eddie?
Yes, it would be required to meet those increased buffer standards for the Golden Knights Boulevard.
Great, thank you. Member Seidler.
Thank you. My question is, do you have an estimated build-out time for this?
We like to have a build-out as soon as possible, but I would say, probably, maybe July or August of next year, we may have a build-out.
Okay, and the size that we have it's quite a large piece of property. Do you have an idea of how big of a structure you're looking to put on it?
It won't be a big structure. It's probably going to be like 10,000 to 12,000 square feet. For this type of industrial, you guys have a floor-to-area ratio of 1, which is really big. I think will probably be 0.2 to 0.25 floor-to-area ratio when we have ultimate build-out. We just don't see this to be a huge development in terms of buildings out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Any more cards, Lori?
No more cards.
All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Any comments? If not, does anyone care to make a motion? Vice Chairman Childs.
I make a motion that we recommend approval for 9A SSA 6-2025.
Do you need this in 2 sections? 3 sections?
3 seconds.
Yeah, 3 separate.
For the, hold on, let's see, I think they wrote it down here for me, sure. To approve the annexation of the 9.18 acres. Is that good? Well, but
Oh,
do we
we
have
had
to do
it.
it in 3 separate things, or can we do it in one? Motion.
We could do 3 separate motions, one for the annexation, one for the future land use, and one for the zoning.
Yeah. All right, so this one's for the annexation.
All right, yeah, I have a second.
Second.
All right, having a second. Any comments before we take a vote? All right, roll call, Lori.
Member Garad,
Yes?
Member Scully,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Childs,
Yes.
Member Gillen,
Yes.
Secretary Grant,
Yes.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Chairman Aton?
Yes.
I make a motion that we recommend approval of the comprehensive plan for the same SSA 6-2025.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments before roll call? You leave your light on, Member Faison. I figured you did, but roll call, please, Lori.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Childs?
Yes.
Member Scully?
Yes.
Member Garad?
Yes.
Member Gillen?
Yes.
Chairman Aton?
Yes.
I make a motion that we recommend approval of the rezoning for the same SSA 6-2025.
Second.
Second by Member Garad. Any comments? No comments? Roll call, please.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Member Gillen?
Yes.
Member Garad?
Yes.
Member Scully?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Childs?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Chairman Aton?
Yes. I'll ask the question. When does it go before council?
It will be before council on October 28th.
Great. Thank you. Welcome to the city, hopefully. All right. Next order of business is a final plat. The conditional use permit for Cold Spot has been pulled and will be resubmitted at no date certain, or do we have a date certain on that?
We do not have a date at this time. So just want to make it clear for everybody that the CUP number 2, the applicant has agreed to withdraw at this time to work with staff some more to hopefully have a favorable recommendation moving forward. And we'll bring it back to you. So that next order of business then is item 9C, Harbor Lakes final plat, beginning on page 137 of 421. Harbor Lakes, formerly known as Falcon's Roost and Lake Bella, is a 28-lot, single-family home subdivision, including wetland conservation areas, stormwater management, and infrastructure improvements located north of Knox McRae Drive with a parcel ID 223517 AV*25. The sketch plat for the subdivision was approved by City Council on February 9th, 2021. The following are attached and required for approval: final plat, covenants, performance bond, sidewalk performance bond. The final plat is consistent with the comprehensive plan, the preliminary plat, and final plat requirements described in Chapter 34, Article 3, Division Plat of the Code. Staff reviewed the final plat for consistency with the comprehensive plan, land development regulations, and recommends approval. Staff also reviewed the covenants and performance bonds and recommends acceptance. Page 140 is the overall plan if you wanted to see the overall site with the different buffer tracks and lots. Again, the platting process, this is the last step in the platting process, final plat. And so this is, the improvements have been constructed and the city is accepting the improvements. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Anyone have any questions for staff? All right. Open a public hearing. We have any cards, Lori?
No, sir.
I'll close the public hearing then. Bringing it back to the commission and for any questions or a motion. Member Garad.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval to the City Council of the final plat, Harbor Lakes East.
Second.
Excuse me.
Member Grant seconds.
I second.
Oh, you're a little late. Sorry, Member Grant beat you to it.
Got to be quick and dodge.
Anyone have anything before we take a vote?
Does this motion cover the covenants and all the other additives? Okay.
Eddie shook his head yes, so we'll put that in the record. All right. Roll call, please, Lori.
Member Gillen?
Yes.
Member Garad?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Childs?
Yes.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Member Scully?
Yes.
Chairman Aton?
Yes. All right. Item D, transmittal of the ear amendments.
Transmittal of the ear. We have a presentation. Our team from Kimley Horn is here to help us. Again, if you remember, we presented this in June or July. The changes to the comp plan as part of their EAR, the Evaluation and Appraisal Report, which is our update to the comp plan every 7 years. We have a couple tweaks that we've want to just present to you all to make sure that we're still on the same page, and then we'll present it to City Council and send it off to the state for review.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today we're going to be discussing the evaluation and appraisal review and the comprehensive plan amendments that have come out of that process. Where do I point?
He just thought you were.
Sorry. Sorry about that. We'll start off with a overview of the updates from when we were here for a work session in June, where we discussed the statutory required statutory changes and recommended changes, as well as the outcomes of the evaluation and holding capacity analysis, which is in your packet labeled the local conditions analysis. So just as a reminder, the evaluation and appraisal review is a process that is required by the state every 7 years. And it's an opportunity to evaluate the status of the comprehensive plan and whether it's meeting the needs of the city now and in the future. And it also requires that we update any policies to align with new state laws that have been adopted since the last year review. A part of this process is looking at the projected growth and whether the city has the capacity to support that growth. We assessed the densities by the allotted by the future land uses of the comprehensive plan and found that the existing densities do support the projected growth. Therefore, the densities do not need to be amended to comply with state law. In addition, the comprehensive plan establishes level of services for infrastructure, including parks, sewer, water, and transportation. And we found that the levels of service will meet the needs of the projected population. There are several changes based on statutory updates, some of which are required and some which are recommended based on some of those changes that are now allowed. The first is that the state no longer allows moratoriums after storms, so we're revising the coastal management element to reflect that. There are some updates to the public school element to align with the state impact fees, notification requirements and credits, and updates to the septic and sewer requirements in the infrastructure element to ensure that that we're taking care of our impaired waters in these basin management area plans, which Titusville is entirely located within. Some of the recommended changes, these next three are not required, are to the housing element, adding a policy related to accessory dwelling units since the state removed some barriers related to ADUs. Next is the capital improvements element. We're just addressing some reporting requirements to add some clarity and adding in language about a mobility fee related to the mobility plan and the ability for the city to waive impact fees related to affordable housing. Lastly is the future land use element. We're adding language to enhance the historic preservation specifically related to cemeteries, since that's what the state statute addresses. However, we also took it as an opportunity to strengthen the language around all historic preservation in the comprehensive plan. This update also presented an opportunity to address some past community engagement that has taken place. In 2017 was the Titusville Tomorrow efforts, and while a lot of the goals of that plan have been implemented in the comprehensive plan, there were a few that have not been addressed yet, such as the waterfront. So we added some policies related to enhancing the public realm along the waterfront and encouraging and supporting the development of a trail. In 2024, there was the natural resources public engagement. Again, a lot of these goals were incorporated into the comprehensive plan, but we identified some that were missing. So we added policies related to tree canopy and green space, native and Florida-friendly landscaping, and best practices related to evaluation of wetlands. The city also received recommendations from ECF-RPC in 2021, mostly related to updating references to some of their action plans and updating some outdated language. And additionally, we had recommendations from staff for access management best practices, mostly focused on enhancing safety along trails and focusing on pedestrian and bicycle improvements at those intersection points to support the development of those trails. Next, we wanted to highlight a change in the local conditions analysis from June. We added some additional data related to housing to make sure that we were complying with state requirements. So this is new from the last time you received this packet for the work session. We looked more at the types of housing that we're seeing here in Titusville. Homeownership is at 72%, and over half of the housing types here are single family. There is an older housing stock with 21% of the homes being built before 2000. And while some of these homes might be in need of some rehabilitation, this also includes the beautiful historic homes that we see here in Titusville. 35% of the households are cost burden, which means that they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And this is mostly prevalent among renters making less than 80% AMI. However, it is projected to increase amongst all income ranges through 2050, just emphasizing the need to address housing in Titusville in this comprehensive plan update. Next, I'll pass it over to Eliza to talk about some of the public feedback that we've heard in the past 2 work sessions.
Thanks, Emily. Good evening. So first, we're going to talk about outcomes from the last meeting we had with this body back in June. As you said, we went through additional detail on some of those policies in that meeting. Also, the full strike-through underline of the policies is in your packet. Emily already talked about the update to the local conditions analysis related to housing. There were also a number of policies that were revised based on feedback either from this board or from the public at that meeting, and I'll go over those. So at that meeting, we didn't hear overall objections to the recommended updates based on the statutory requirements and the other recommendations. We heard specific support for policies and amendments related to natural resources and green space. As a result of that, we delved a little bit more into those and beefed those up a bit, including expanding policies related to tree canopy and native and Florida-friendly landscaping, as well as wetlands. We heard in that meeting from, I believe it was a member of the public, a desire for more discussion of medium density and a variety of housing types. We didn't make any changes as a result of that because we had actually already fairly recently made changes as a result of the Titusville Tomorrow visioning process related to those ideas. So we felt like that was sufficiently addressed, but commensurate with what the public wanted to see. We heard at that meeting about the importance of historic preservation and the cemetery program. So Emily talked a little bit about where we landed with the policies related to historic cemeteries and other sorts of historic preservation. So that has been enhanced since the initial meeting that we had with you all. during that meeting, we also heard the concern that what if growth happens faster than the projections? So we were looking at the projections from BEBR, which is the Bureau of Economic and Business Research, which is basically the source that it's University of Florida source that most cities and counties look to for population projections. So with respect to that, it's a very solid source. However, things do change. Unexpected things happen. We want to reassure everyone that for starters, this is a 20-year horizon, but it gets updated at a minimum every 7 years. So the state requirement is to update every 7 years, and in fact, the city, if it's seeing those trends changing, can update the comprehensive plan at any time to address those changes. That relates also to the infrastructure availability. So as part of that discussion, one of the big concerns was, well, if population increases faster than it's been projected, will Titusville have the infrastructure to support that? So there's multiple different ways that the city deals with expected infrastructure that go beyond what's in the comprehensive plan, including the water supply plan, which is updated even more frequently, every 5 years at a minimum. And in addition, development permits being approved are dependent on the availability of this critical infrastructure. So if it got to a point where the city did not have that infrastructure available, there would be a backstop for it. Now, we absolutely don't anticipate getting to that point. The city would be well ahead of that, but if it came to that, there would be a backstop to ensure that there's sufficient infrastructure for the citizens. We also had some questions about stormwater management, which is already addressed in the conservation element. Now moving on to the city council work session. So we did a very similar work session with them that we did with this body, including sharing what we heard at this meeting with them. Additional concerns we heard at that meeting were the discussion about waiving impact fees for affordable housing. It came up that, well, the Live Local Act at the state level is already addressing affordable housing and addressing certain monetary impacts of that. Do we really need more? And so we refined that policy to specifically deal with low income and extremely low income housing, serving those population groups. The Live Local Act goes up to really middle income housing, and frankly, because of the way it's structured, is most likely to result in middle income housing. So this impact fee waiver now is targeted specifically at that much lower income housing to incentivize that, which is a different target than the Live Local Act. We also heard a desire for the city to explicitly support the Florida Wildlife Corridor. That's a statewide effort to create not just conservation, but connected conservation corridors to support the migration of species throughout the state. So we've added language to the conservation element that explicitly mentions the Florida Wildlife Corridor and points to the need to coordinate with that planning to support those statewide corridors. We try to be relatively brief because we have talked about much of this before, but we focused on the updates that have happened since we talked to you last, and we're happy to take any questions or hand it back to Eddie as appropriate.
Are the population numbers that you used in any of this as far as the actual numbers go?
Sure. So, I mean, they're at a high level, they're on that slide that we had at the beginning of the presentation, but I believe the data report is also in the local conditions analysis is also in the packet.
You have 49,000 plus population 2023, which was a question I had. Why was the population data 2023 data as opposed to using BEBR data that could be accurately done for 2025? Was there a basis for that?
Sure. I mean, so that was the most, so some of that was based on different sets of reports that we use. So some of the more detailed data around like the housing types isn't necessarily available to the present. I mean, the 2025 estimates, we're in 2025. So the estimates are usually not they usually fall a little bit behind where we are. And we started this, I believe, in 2024.
Because I saw an analysis that projected Titusville for 2025 at 50,000, closer to 51,000. Yeah. 3,000 people in a small community is a pretty good percentage to use older data. just wasn't clear on why you'd pick 2023.
Sure. We used the best available data we had at the time. And again, that might be that, yeah, when we started the process. And in addition, data that we could use consistently across all the metrics that we were looking at. So in some cases, we might have more recent data for that metric, but not for other metrics. And the projections, I think, do not change.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman Child.
For the very low income housing stuff, is it just this one addition of focusing on accessory dwelling units? Is that the only part that's trying to address that, or?
No, so there's I believe two. Tell me if I'm missing any, but there's two different provisions. One is encouraging the provision of accessory dwelling units, and those aren't necessarily affordable in the sense of they're what we call naturally affordable or naturally attainable housing. They tend to be less expensive because of the nature of the units. There's another provision that was added, and this is explicitly allowed only under the latest state statute that allows the city to waive impact fees for low-income housing, affordable housing. And that would be as part of a project that has committed that they will only rent out or sell their units to low-income or very low-income individuals or households.
But the very low income, of course, like Live Local it's absurd about, what's affordable, housing. Most of it is, like you said, it's medium, above what that focuses on. So when we're talking about like the definition for very low and we're doing waiving impact fees for that, is there a state, definition for that, or?
Yes, so we're
Okay.
using the HUD, the federally
Okay.
defined categories that
Is it
are
more reasonable? Is it more reasonable?
Yeah,
more
so-
realistic?
So, off the top of my head, we're talking about people who are making probably less than 60% of the average median income, or households that are making less than 60%, versus, the Live Local that goes up to, I forget, if it's
120%.
yeah, 120%, which is more than, higher than the average income.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But those are defined and they change, HUD updates those annually.
Yeah, I like the ADU stuff too, and I think we've kind of gone through a little bit, and I would love for us to open it up, wider for everybody too. So, all right, thank you.
And both of those provisions will require a change to the land development code to get to full implementation. So there's an additional step.
Member Faison.
When speaking of affordable housing, and I don't like the word affordable because it's no longer affordable. I don't like the new catch term attainable either. Both of those are simply it just doesn't happen anymore. The median income for this area here is just it's too low, and developers are playing with the numbers, like you said, making it medium income, right? So one of the other ways that we can do to make housing attainable for our very low income families, one of the areas would be land leases. And has that been discussed? Is the city willing to open up some land and do land leasing and build some housing in that manner?
Is that the same as a community land trust?
Yes.
We have our first CLT with Neighborhood Services Department.
Okay, fantastic. And so that's one way there because it will be in perpetuity, correct?
Correct. That's one thing I wanted to point out also is that while we're talking about the comprehensive plan, which discusses development at large, the city also has an affordable housing committee that focuses on strategies just for affordable housing. And they have, I think it's about 16 different strategies that they go through every year to approve, to make sure that the city is approving the best strategies for affordable housing every year. So we're attacking affordable housing on both fronts, through the comprehensive plan and through strategies, looking at the Affordable Housing Committee, approving those incentives.
Right. And anyway, so we've discussed that. And so the other thing that I kind of caution or I'm worried about when we talk about these projections of future residents, and we've talked before, right, is that when someone puts in an application to build a development on a street, we don't take into consideration all those developments because they all may not get built. But if they do, that's an immense strain on what's already there. And again, I'll use my home. I live off of Sisson Road, and they're building those 91 townhomes across the street from my development there. And right next to it is an apartment complex. And so Sisson, all of a sudden has an apartment complex and now 91 townhomes and all this development on a collector street. Is that a collector road, Sisson?
Yes.
All right. That's a lot of new traffic on that road. And so when we say that the infrastructure is there to support growth, is it really? Is it really there? Because we've had residents complaining, right, that stormwater is backing up into their home because of a new development. We have residents complaining that low water pressure because of new development. Is our infrastructure really in place to sustain said growth up to 2050 without any major improvements?
So I will say the comprehensive plan is dealing with this very much at a high kind of 50,000 feet level. So for instance, we're looking at, is there enough gallons of water to serve the whole city? Not necessarily whether there might be specific issues in specific locations. That would be something that would have to be dealt on a much more specific basis. The other thing that I would mention is that this update to the comprehensive plan doesn't create any new development rights because we're not making any changes to the future land use map. So there's nowhere that you can build a house after these go through that you couldn't build a house now. So that, that that is part of what we're looking at, is that we're not increasing any development as part of this update.
I guess my point behind that was that from what I'm hearing you say is that where we are today will sustain growth into 2050. And my point is, from what I'm hearing from residents is that's not true. They're experiencing something very, very different from what your report is saying that is possible. And I guess that's what my point is. Would you guys agree?
Member Garrett.
I think that one of the components of the comprehensive plan is levels of service that were adopted in most communities in Florida. They choose to pick a very highly dense, if you think of automobile traffic as dense, volume-wise, at a level of service that they can build into for the next 50 years. However, you will find your local street is congested because a level of service D is a pretty congested road. I'm not positive I recall the level of service adopted for local collector roads, but I suspect it's either C or D. Most communities don't want to adopt a level of service. B would be Sisson Road right now. And if that was the case, you'd stop development and start buying right-of-way. And the dilemma of the horns is if you don't have the money, how do you buy the right-of-way? And if you don't grow, how do you get the money to get the right-of-way? And that's why level of services have been adopted at reasonably high volume levels. Does that sound kind of correct?
And in addition, I would note that I don't think that's a state road, but a lot of the system is state roads, which adds an additional level of complexity because the city's not responsible for those facilities.
But if that's a segue, I was going to mention that, and I've talked to Mr. Parrish about this. I attended the workshop that FDOT did for State Road 405, South Street, whichever you call it. And again, the dilemma of the horns is Titusville participates in the Transportation Planning Organization, a funding source, and Titusville's in competition with other communities. The presentation for 405 is always the same. We are going to work on the road, but we don't have the money for the right-of-way. So one of the things that's important I noticed is the policy 1.10.1, where you're kind of shoehorning in the next step, which is to adopt local ordinances that regulate and control median crossings and also allow the city to dictate where the driveway may be today, isn't where it's going to be next year when they widen the road, and controlling that through easements or frontage roads or rearage roads or whatever road you do that keeps traffic volumes from intersecting those principal streets, which is where the congestion begins and ends on roads like Sisson and 405. And tonight's a good example of how fast that takes place. If you want to develop, you need water and sewer. If you're in the unincorporated county, you have to annex to get it. And 405, Titusville can't possibly acquire the right-of-way in the funding available to it. But working out local ordinances in combination with the TPO could get Titusville in a leveraged position one day to move them up in the funding sources available through that organization. And that was one of the things I actually mentioned to the mayor the night of the meeting is this is a good policy to have. The next step is to start working on the local ordinances that make that implemented.
Member Seidler.
Thank you. I'd like to capitalize on what you were mentioning about the infrastructure and their projected growth rate and how it appears to be wonderful, and what we are experiencing in the community right now. We do have a lot of flooding. I am concerned about what is Titusville, our water capacity right now? How are we doing? How many do we serve? These are questions that kind of come up in my head. And have we reached our capacity in Titusville?
So I don't know if you want to pull up there. We do have those numbers in the report. I don't know all of them offhand. I don't know if we went into them in detail last time either, just because we didn't want to keep you here all night. But based on the report, there is a sufficient capacity to serve the existing population, as well as the projected increase that we're showing in terms of overall water supply. I will mention stormwater's been mentioned a couple times. There's not a level of service for stormwater, so that's not part of the infrastructure that we were looking at when we addressed this. So that is a different beast, and all of these are kind of different situations. You know, the amount of water people use that can change a little bit, but it's you know, not to be crude, but people flush the toilet like on average about the same number of times, right? Versus transportation can be highly variable depending on the choices that people make in terms of where they live and work and how they choose to travel. And parks is somewhat subjective, right? Like there's not a objective way to define how many parks is the right amount of parks. So all of these are a little bit different, and if we wanted to get into them individually, I think we'd get some different answers, but I wanted to address those issues, and hopefully that also addressed your question.
Where do we get the majority of our water?
I know we get part of our water from Cocoa for the south part. Some of it's fed in. We've had Public Works here. to kinda answer that.
We've
I
had
can't
some
remember the percentage,
presentations.
so-
I was going to mention, I think it was in that July meeting that was on the overhead earlier, probably prior to your tenure, I think. Kevin Cook came and
That's
gave
it. Was
quite
that
a-
in July?
Yeah, and he
It was in
gave
July.
and it might be something you can call up on YouTube, but he gave a real thorough explanation of where our water comes from. As you said, some comes from Cocoa, but it's decreasing. Most of it comes from the well field area in the north,
Yeah.
and the least comes from the well field area in the south. And that his projections, when he gave the dissertation on available potable water, was Titusville's got capacity for water for the next 20-year comprehensive plan period.
But he did mention that the one, I think he said one was tainted, the one by the airport.
Right. The southern well field is the one they want to try to move away from, but volumetrically, they've got capacity for that. At least that's what the report said that he gave. And I do believe it was in the July meeting.
And that was in the July meeting, okay.
And I do have our numbers if you want those. Looking at the local conditions memo, we're showing that the current usage, and this is based not on level of service, but on actual usage, is a little over 4.5 million gallons per day. And the capacity is 6.5 million gallons. And we're projecting that there's the need for an additional something like 400,000 gallons. And there's another 1 million gallons available. So that's what our numbers are showing at this time. Now, we don't go into the level of detail that the water supply plan goes into.
So I'm sorry. Okay, so something didn't ring true. Yeah. All right, so our current populace is what? That's using 4.5 million gallons? And then what is the delta for our growth? That's what I'm looking for. So you're saying that currently we're using 4-point-something million gallons a day, right? Or a year, whatever that metric is, right? And that's today in 2025. And in 25 years from now, we're only going to need 400,000 additional gallons with the current growth rate.
Based on the level of service of gallons per day, yes. And
Okay.
they're,
That and the Cape themselves right now are projected to bring in, I think it's 100,000 people. How many people is the Cape trying to bring in? They just reported they're trying to bring in 100,000 folks, and let's just say we only get 15% of that. Are you saying that will not increase us more than 400,000 gallons?
We're projecting an increase of roughly 6,000 units. So yes, this is not projecting 100,000.
So you guys are projecting 6,000 units in the next 25 years.
Correct. That's based on this University of Florida.
And then, so what was our growth over the last 5 years? Oh, just 5 years.
So the growth rates, I don't have the historic growth rates in front of me right now, but the historic growth rates in this community that during the time we've been working here, which is since 2017, have been pretty modest. It's been very slow growth.
Right, but that was prior to commercialization of NASA.
Sure.
Since the commercialization of NASA, our economy's kind of exploded. It's kind of, we've gotten kind of big, and it's not slowing down. So you're using past growth rates to project future growth rate, not including the numbers of NASA. Is that
So
accurate?
we are not projecting the growth rate. We are relying on University of Florida.
Who is also not projecting the growth rate. Okay, so once again, we're circling right back around to that we're not using proper data to project future usage, which means there's a really big probability of us not being able to sustain the growth that we're looking at truly having, not what the University of Florida is projecting. Is that accurate?
I can't speak to the University of Florida's projections because I don't have all the detail on how those are produced.
Okay. Well, that would be important to know, wouldn't it? Like how the data was gathered to make sure that it actually meets our needs? Because we just can't use data just to be using data for data purposes, right? We have to know how the data was gathered to make sure that the data actually represents the communities that we're reporting on. Otherwise, we're giving out false information.
So the state statute requires reliance on one of these established data sources for these updates. I certainly hear what you're saying in terms of making sure that it's really projecting what's likely to happen. And I think the city, again, has multiple outlets for doing that, including the water supply plan, which is more aggressive. I believe when we talk to them, they're using more aggressive population estimates, which are in order to be conservative.
But this isn't just for water now. So like I said, we're going back over to the whole comprehensive plan, right? So we're talking now about electricity usage. We're talking about road, we're talking about the entire comprehensive plan, and that there are people that are moving here by the droves, and we're not taking that into consideration because University of Florida didn't. This report to me now, honestly, just for me, it is useless. It really is not. Cannot be used as a planning tool because it doesn't take into account the true growth. Could you imagine running a business based on old data from 1980 and saying I'm gonna start a business based on 1980s data in 2025? And you're like, it doesn't make sense because it doesn't apply in 2025. Okay, thank you.
Member Seidler.
What do we do when we feel that what the community is experiencing and what the data is telling us, and we have questions about that? What are our options?
So there's been people that have disagreed with using Kimberly Horn because we use them for a lot of things. And this is where sometimes when you use Kimberly Horn for so many things, it becomes a conflict of interest. Not you guys individually, right? It's just the city decided to use you guys, your firm, for a multitude of things. So they also represent contractors as well. So Kimberly Horn not only represents the city of Titusville, but they also represent contractors as well. And so many people in the community have thought that have voiced their concerns about continually using Kimberly Horn for these types of consulting, right? Because they have a dual purpose. I mean, they do. And when I look at this report now, not you guys, right, but just for my city, I love this. I was born and raised here. When I look at this, I get angry because this gives a pie in the sky look that things are all great for the city of Titusville when it's not. We're heading for a cliff, and nobody's talking about you're going to run off a cliff right now. That's a problem, okay? And it needs to be addressed sooner than later. Pushing it down the road to 2050 and all of a sudden say, oh, well, we grew and we didn't expect that growth. That's not true. It's not true. We know they're coming. They've been coming.
May I just make one point of fact? So I just want, in case you weren't aware, I've been working with City of Titusville since 2017. At that time, I was part of a different firm. called Canaan Associates, which was much smaller and was not actively involved in development projects within the city. I am now an employee of Kimley Horn, and take that for what you will, but I just want to provide that context from 2017 to 2023. End of 2022, we were serving the city of Titusville under a different flag, so we do have that history.
Okay, thank you.
Member Garad.
I'm not sure I can be 100% accurate in my memory, so I'll qualify a statement to answer your question and also respond to your concern. Bieber is a recognized authority on demographic population analyses, and the state of Florida respects that, requires that. So whether you're loading a school with students and planning the next school, when growth goes crazy, I came from growth goes crazy, it's been going crazy for 40 years. Sure. So when growth goes crazy in fast growth areas like Central Florida, and projection Titusville could join that, Bieber is the source. It's where Bieber gets the data. So the building permits, the certificates of occupancy are forwarded through the local governments to the University of Florida. They take the numbers, they crunch them, and they project. When they start seeing trends, economic trends, business research, those trends would represent as well faster growth percentiles. They in turn adjust their numbers accordingly. Incredibly important Bieber is to school projections, because you can't build a school in 1 year, but you can grow a population of a school in that same period of time with rapid development. It is the dog chases the tail, but it's the only game in town because Bieber's the recognized analysis. You can't really go out and grab some numbers from your local Department of Planning and Zoning and say, look, this is how many people we think we're going to have, because they're going to refute that by saying that Bieber's projection's there. We've tried that back when I saw the problem with school loading and trying to work around the obvious slowness of adjusting demographic projections when they're using documents like building permits. One building permit's issued, and in fast growth communities, 150 subdivision lots got approved by the final subdivision, like tonight. And next week, we'll have 2 houses under construction. You're playing catch up. It's just the way it works. But there are certainly, I think Florida's recognized because of the trend of 30 or 40 years of just 50 years, 60 years, Disney. It just, this growth goes from 8% to 10% to 12% to 20%. And you can see what you see is reality. But there really isn't any way that local governments have found a way around the barn on that. It's just the way that it plays out.
And I respect that. I really do. And I understand that it's not an easy game. But it is also, as a member of this community, I can't let that be the answer. I just can't sit back and say, okay, well, that's just the way that it is. Because if we do, then we just let, we just run off the trip. I mean, we run off the cliff and no one spoke up. So I'm going to speak up, and I'm going to say that this needs to be looked at, harder. That's all. But I love you guys.
Any additional comments? All right, I'll open the public hearing. Do you have any cards on this?
Yes, Laura Lee Thompson.
Hello.
Laura Lee Thompson, 3550 Irwin Avenue in Mims. And I'm here tonight to ask you guys to make a couple of changes in the document before it goes to the city council. Well, no, I guess you have to recommend to the city council that the changes that the TEC would like to see happen. You guys are the ones that'll have to carry the ball for us, since we haven't even looked at this. So in Conservation Element Policy 1.6.8, it says the city shall consider a study to research and incorporate best practices to conserve wetlands based on quality and importance within the wetland system. Well, the TEC at our last meeting voted to make our next major project trying to help straighten out the inconsistencies in the wetlands policies in the comp plan, specifically in the future land use element and the conservation element. And we want to strengthen, it says that this was based on, based on recommendations from the 2024 Natural Resources Public Engagement thing, which I have here in my hand, and nowhere in it does it say to do a study. This can be done in-house with staff. We don't need to pay a consultant to do a study. And this language, adding this language to the comp plan, incorporate best practices, that's not strong language. That's not going to help us. It's just going to be obfuscated just like all the other languages. So we're asking that you would recommend to the City Council that policy 1.6.8 be removed from the transmittal before it goes to the state. The other thing that we would like to see changed is policy 1.5.8. And it says, require Florida-friendly plant materials for all new development, prohibit the planting of invasive exotic plants, and incentivize the use of native vegetation as a primary design element in new landscaping. Promote the use of plantings appropriate to the unique climatic conditions of Titusville and appropriate for the specific planting conditions to minimize maintenance and encourage plant health. And it says in the next column, based on recommendations from the 2024 Natural Resources Public Engagement. This language actually was in the draft of the Natural Resources Report, but when it came to the TEC for final improvement, we spent a lot of time going through every strategy, every column, and changing the wording to make sure that it was what we wanted. And the draft said to use Florida-friendly, but the TEC changed it to Brevard native. There's a big difference between Florida-friendly and Brevard native plants that will actually grow and survive here in our area. And so the TEC respectfully asks that you would recommend to the City Council that in policy 1.5.8 that the words Florida-friendly should be changed to Brevard native. And that's pretty simple. Any questions?
No, I remember when you brought that into us last time about the reason why it needs to be Brevard native and not fully friendly was because of the growing zones, and that we are in a different growing zone than South Florida and a different growing zone than North Florida. And so I do remember that, and I think that's a great point. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks for your consideration, and hopefully you will recommend to the City Council take out that policy about the wetlands. That is not going to make it any easier for the TEC to wade through those policies. And it's just going to confuse things even more and change Florida friendly to Brevard native. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurie. Any additional cards, Laurie?
No, sir.
All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back. Member Garad?
Just a question, is it possible the language you just spoke about is printed that you could hand it to staff in case we vote for that, so we make sure we get the language correct? Sure. Thank you.
Any additional comments?
Just
Member Faison?
Yeah, do you guys remember the growing zones in water that Brevard? Okay. And then for 1.6.8, can you tell us about the thought process behind the city shall consider a study to research versus the city shall, take the word consider out if that's what we're going to do. And then from best practices, wetlands is something that we've been trying to preserve the most. So again, to her point, I don't understand why we are only considering, and again, best practices. That leaves a lot for interpretation and as well as misuse. So can you tell us the thought process behind the language of shall consider and best practices?
So I'll make specifically on shall consider, whenever we're obligating this, whenever we're putting in language that could obligate the city to spend money in a comprehensive plan, because a comprehensive plan is highly binding, we're very cautious. So we put in that shall considers to make sure the city council has plenty of bandwidth to manage their budget as appropriate, because we know the city doesn't have unlimited funds, and so we don't want to go around requiring the city to do things. So that's the logic behind the shall consider. In terms of the additional language, we are aware that there's a number of issues floating around this, and essentially we didn't have the expertise and scope devoted to this project to really meaningfully deal with the issues that are being discussed. And so this was our solution to address the fact that this does need to be addressed without putting together a proposal that would be inadequately vetted.
Okay. Thank you.
So does staff and Kimberly Horn have any rebuttal, for lack of a better term, on Ms. Thompson's two items, other than what we just talked about?
Sure. I mean, I would say that changing the Florida-friendly to Brevard native is going to impact our reviews. Currently, that's not the code, and so that's going to make some reviews change. Right now, you can use Florida-friendly plants in your landscape plans, and if we were to change that to just Brevard native, that's much more narrow in scope, and that's not fully fleshed out. That's not saying only Brevard native. Maybe that's only a certain threshold. So there's still a lot of detail that needs to be fleshed out in that policy. But if that's the direction that the commission wants to recommend, then that's the direction we'll move in.
And can I add on to that? So, I did have a discussion with our landscape architecture group about this. Florida Friendly is a highly established program. They have databases, they have manuals that are continually updated. So that's why we try to reference that program whenever we can, often rather than trying to come up with unique plant lists or what have you. It is absolutely important that the right plant zones be used, and you're not trying to plant Miami plants in Brevard County or Gainesville plants in Brevard County, and it's up to the landscape architects and the staff to make sure that they're dealing with that appropriately. I did have a detailed conversation about the Brevard native issue, and the feedback that and this is not deep in my expertise, but I've tried to educate myself, that Brevard County has enough internal diversity that there are plants that would be appropriate in one area of Brevard County that would not necessarily be appropriate in another area of Brevard County, such as Titusville. And Titusville, I was told, even has fairly unique climatic conditions that are different than most of the rest of the county. So that's why we tried to be very specific on, for one thing, requiring versus encouraging, requiring the established program and I believe the language before was encourage Florida friendly, so it did not require Florida friendly. So we think that's an upgrade to go from encouraging Florida friendly to requiring. That's very doable. But when it gets to the more detail of what's specific to Titusville, that's something that would need to be more fleshed out and probably dealt with on a case-by-case basis. The other thing that I would note is that, a shopping center parking lot is not a native context. So making sure that you have plants that are survivable in those conditions isn't always the same as what would be survivable in a native habitat condition. So that's the other thing that the Florida Friendly Plant List does, is provide the diversity of plants that are necessary to deal with the diversity of conditions you might be dealing with, both geographically in terms of where the project is located, as well as specifically where the project is located within a site.
Member Grod?
I had a question, and along the lines of the comprehensive plan, the 50,000-foot observation versus down in the trenches. We had a really lengthy, because I was involved in a lot of discussion about all these different terminologies of plants and the list of plants that was presented, which was in the landscaping code that just recently went through a revision that focused on a lot of the stuff TEC wanted. I seem to recall there were percentiles in that we worked out that we would have so many of this and so many of that, or we'd encourage this instead of that. So perhaps in the language that's presented now from the 50,000 foot, it wouldn't preclude, in fact, it wouldn't affect the implementation. The implementation of the landscaping code comes from the city ordinance, which was worked out I think this summer when we were talking about it, or last spring, where we've codified what's planted here and this is better than that and so many of these and we deviated, I recall, from what was a much more universal landscaping ordinance where everything was going to be petunias from New York State. Your point about wrong plant, wrong place. So it seems to me that from a comprehensive plan point of view, this doesn't affect the current ordinance that was worked out to specifically what Eddie was talking about. They'd have to rewrite an ordinance if you change this code and you're back to going to the landscaping code. This doesn't affect that code. That code was worked out to balance the type of planting material. Maybe perhaps language could say Florida friendly and encourage Brevard native, something that would gel with what kind of dovetailed with the ordinance. And that way, at least you do make a statement 50,000 feet up. Be aware we're wanting to stress using our native plants in this region, Brevard County. Does that kind of work, you think, maybe, with what DEC?
Yeah, maybe even add North Brevard native to our point.
And if you said encourage, you wouldn't have to rewrite your ordinance because it's suggesting. And I think we even had discussions about subjective words like encourage. What's that mean?
Right.
So, thank you.
Any other comments before we move to the next step? All right, anyone care to take a stab at a motion here? Let Mikey do it.
Segue of my comment, huh? Along the lines of what I've just mentioned, I believe we can recommend to the City Council to approve the EAR amendments as proposed and include an amendment to the language as pointed out where we can add encourage using Brevard native to that statement. I forget the policy, 1.5.8 or 1.6.8 or one of those. And if you can work that language out, that would be my recommendation.
Okay, do we want to address the other item mentioned as well? As it related to the requirement for report, I think, or wetlands?
The 1.6.8 is the wetlands one that Laura Lee.
And that's on page 356.
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
You said 358? Yes, I think that was in line with you. TEC prefer that not be. TEC recommended not to have that illustrated in the comp plan.
That's correct.
Let me ask staff a question before I change my motion. Absent that, is there any prohibition using the current code, all the codes that affect wetland integration or wetland impacts, without that policy at all?
No.
Back to the implementation by ordinance and the 50,000-foot view from overhead.
The ordinances remain in effect.
Okay. Then I'd recommend is to add to it the deletion of 1.6.8 on page 356.
Take it out completely.
I believe that's what you were recommending, yes.
Yeah, take it out.
And that was kind of the reason I asked absent that. Well, right now it's absent that, correct?
Yeah, this is an addition.
So if you don't make the change,
don't
it
make
doesn't
the
affect the implementation of the ordinance, which protects wetlands codified in some standard.
Second.
Any additional comments for vote? Roll call, please, Lori.
What was the motion? What was the motion again?
The motion was to add the word encourage Brevard native landscaping in the statement of the policy 1.8
1.5.
and
Page?
to delete policy 1.6.8 on page 356 and to, yes?
Okay.
And parenthetically, because without it, you have what you have now as a rule, and all this is doing is saying you're going to propose to consider your point about subjective words. So I think it works well the way it is without that statement.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lori.
Member Scully,
Yes.
Secretary Grant,
Yes.
Member Garad,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Childs.
Yes.
Member Gilliland,
Yes.
Member Faison,
No.
Chairman Aton.
Yes. And typically, they ask for why there's a no. Member Faison.
Yeah, again, so with the numbers that were used tonight, projecting 6,000 units between now and 2050, that just doesn't seem to bode well for me. And so that skews the entire report.
All right. And this goes to council. Trying to catch you, Eddie. Want to do Joe proud?
On the 28th.
Great, thank you. All right, this is the second petitions and requests from the public present session. Does anyone care to speak?
I have one card. Bill Young.
Bill Young, 612 Inter Avenue. Okay, so I have a copy of this thing here. You all know what this is? It says you guys acknowledged that, acknowledgements that you guys worked on this. Apparently the TEC was supposed to work on it, did, but I don't see their name in here. So what I found was on page 51, it talks about energy efficiency and improvements and improvement built energy support. And so it talks about that. So I'm not sure what all you guys do or what your requirements are, what your purpose is, and what controls you have. But do you know what a zero energy home is? Everybody knows what a zero energy home is? Maybe? No? Some? Maybe? You heard of it? Okay, so
So zero net sun energy.
So, okay, so a zero energy home. So we're having developers build hundreds of houses, okay, that I don't think you're being a planning and zoning organization. Wouldn't you set the rules that say they need to be zero energy homes? If this plan says you're trying to make them efficient, use renewable and things like that, then aren't you making all these developers do that? Isn't that part of your job? I don't know what all your job is, but here in this plan, it talks about that, okay? So I don't know what you were doing Saturday, but my house was open, it's solar powered, and it was open for the public to come and see how my house is solar powered. So I had some people come and talk to me and say, gee, I got $400, $500 a month electric bill. And then I tell them mine's less than 100. And they go, what? Okay, so you can add zero energy building construction for less than $100 a month to your house and save $300. So why are you letting people build new homes that they're going to have $500 electric bills? So this year I had 5 people come and complain to me because my solar powered house doesn't have that kind of a bill. So why are you letting these developers do this? Isn't this part of your plan to do this? So that's what I'm asking. You know, I don't know what your job is, but here on that page, you have 3 or 4 items that talk about. And so the electric charging station over here at the Welcome Center doesn't work. Okay, anybody have an electric car? Who has an electric car? I'm the only one? Oh, you have one? See, I have 4.
Just one.
Okay. So, and I tried to park over there, but it doesn't work. It used to work, but now it has a nice fancy sign. A nice fancy sign that says it doesn't work. So I don't know what that costs.
Thank you.
So I guess his question is, which I didn't hear it, but I think his question was, hey, city, so what does it mean when you guys post a zero energy home? So I'm going to ask that question he didn't ask for him. So Eddie, can Can you please explain to us what that means? Because I think he was accusatory, and I don't want to take that personal.
Well, that's Mr. Bill Young. He's a member of our TEC, and he's very proud of his home, his historic home here. He does have a zero-energy home. He cooks hot dogs and cookies in his little solar oven. If you do ever get a chance to stop by on the solar energy tour, he used to work at the Solar Energy Center. He's quite the character. He does have a very nice house.
So I'll ask, since we just got off the comp plan and perhaps he should have spoke during comp plan, is there anything in the comp plan that has to do with soft language, like we've talked about, encourage or whatever, as it relates to energy footprint?
There were no statutory requirements to address anything related to that, so we did not address that in this update.
Okay. Perhaps, Mr. Young, if you cared to talk to city council when they consider this. Oh. If the city council will hear the comp plan that we just spoke to, if you wanted to speak before them when they consider that, it would probably be appropriate that if they did want to address it, that it be put, at least mentioned in the comp plan.
So I should come to a city council meeting?
Probably wouldn't hurt if you want to. They can do more than we can, let me put it that way.
We know each other. I've been in this town since '57. Anybody been here longer than 1957?
I wasn't even born.
Yeah, neither was I, and I'm old.
Oh, I wanted to say, I was gonna say, I have solar power and battery backup, so I can be off the grid completely. I'm a mild prepper. I have food storage too, and water, and
You,
so I'm
you
ready to
consider
go.
yourself a mild
And
prepper?
walking distance from my house.
Prepper.
Right around the corner from me, so
Yeah.
I know where to go.
I also have guns, so don't just storm my house. But
So you may not want to go there. Yeah. Make sure you announce yourself before you go
Yeah.
visit. Yeah. All right. That was the last card, Lori, for
Yes, sir.
petitions. And you don't need a card if anybody wants to speak during that session. City staff report.
Just that we have our new city attorney starting next week, and so we'll.
Who's not the city attorney?
Not the city attorney, but we've been very happy to have him, so yeah, grateful.
All right. Mr. Not City Attorney, do you have any report?
And actually, on that point, we have been keeping her in the loop. She's very excited to be here, and she's wanted to know the projects that are going on. And she watches, she's probably watching right now, because she does watch all the meetings. She's very excited to come on board, so I think she'll be a huge asset to the city.
Great, thank you. I have no report. Any of the members have a report? Member Faison.
Sunday, I think between 3 and 5, 2 and 5, or something, 11 and 3. The city's having something downtown this Sunday. I don't know what it is, but anyways, come downtown this Sunday in the afternoon.
There's something going on downtown.
There's something going on
between
downtown.
2 and 5. All right. If nobody has anything else, we stand adjourned.